Mordecai's love life in regular show is one of the most chaotic storylines in the whole series, and it's way deeper than just awkward flirting and failed dates. Over the course of 8 seasons, he bounces between 3 major love interests, makes a mess of every relationship he touches, and somehow still walks away with a wedding ring. But this is about what it really takes to move on from people who once meant everything to you. In this video, we're breaking down Mordecai's tangled love life by looking at the 3 women who defined it: Margaret, CJ, and Steph. But before we continue the video, be sure to subscribe to our channel and let's get started with Mordecai's first crush. Margaret was Mordecai's crush for what felt like forever. She worked at the coffee shop near the park, and for the longest time that was all it took. One look and Mordecai would completely fall apart inside. Every time she was around, he got so nervous, you could practically see his brain short-circuiting. It was full-on panic mode, and no matter how many times he tried to play it cool, he ended up second-guessing himself into silence. He'd spend hours rehearsing what to say. He'd talk to himself in the mirror, practicing lines like it was life or death. And then the moment would come. She'd ask him a simple question like, "How's your day?" And he'd either stammer out some half response or back out entirely. That pattern went on for seasons. It was the kind of slow-burning, all-consuming crush that built up over time until it felt like part of who he was, even when they started spending time together as friends. He could not stop overthinking everything. Every small gesture felt like a big deal. The tiniest look or laugh would send him into a spiral, trying to figure out if it meant anything. But deep down, he never really knew where he stood with her. And that uncertainty kept him stuck. He hoped it would just work out if he waited long enough, if he said the right thing someday. But that someday kept getting pushed further and further out. And that kind of hope, the kind that lingers without answers, is exhausting. You convince yourself that being patient is enough, that not saying anything is safer than taking a risk. But at some point, hope without action turns into denial. In the early seasons, Mordecai spent a lot of time idealizing Margaret. He put her on a pedestal and imagined this perfect version of their relationship in his head, even though he didn't really know if she felt the same way or if any of it was real. Then came Stake Me Amadeus. For once, he decided to stop waiting. He finally made a real plan. He traded favors with everyone at the park, collected enough Amadeus dollars to score a reservation at the nicest restaurant in town, and mapped out how he was going to ask her to be his girlfriend. It was a big moment for him, because he was finally stepping out of his own head. He was nervous, sure, but he was ready. And then, everything that could go wrong did. He shows up to the restaurant feeling proud, maybe even a little confident. He's about to have this long-awaited conversation with the girl he's liked for years. But before he can even sit down, the hostess calls the FBI, and he gets arrested on the spot. Turns out, the Amadeus dollars were part of a counterfeit scheme, and now Mordecai's dinner date has turned into an FBI sting operation. Things escalate fast: handcuffs, interrogations, chaos, and somehow it all leads to a massive shootout in the middle of the restaurant. But even with all that absurdity going on, the emotional blow hits even harder. In a quiet moment behind a flip table as bullets fly overhead and everything spins out of control, Mordecai finally tells Margaret how much she means to him. He lays it out right there in the middle of a war zone, like the moment can't wait any longer. And just when it seems like the feeling might be mutual, she gives him the real reason she showed up that night. She shows him the letter, got an acceptance into her dream school. She tells him she really likes him, maybe more than he knows, but she has to go. Her future is calling, and no matter how much she cares about him, she cannot ignore that. And just like that, the thing Mordecai had been building up for years slips right through his fingers. That moment never really leaves him. After she walks away, he just goes quiet. He sits on the roof with Rigby, looking out at the sunset, trying to process what just happened, because he did everything he thought he was supposed to do. He opened up, he took the risk, he made the grand gesture, and it still did not work out. That kind of heartbreak hits different. It is the kind that leaves you numb. When you spend so long imagining how things might play out, and then reality drops a completely different ending in your lap, it makes everything feel off balance. Mordecai had built his idea of love around Margaret, and when she left, he had to face something he had been avoiding for a long time. That sometimes, no matter how much you care about someone, life just pulls you in separate directions. First love feels like it should be forever. It changes what you thought love was, but it also teaches you what it means to care, to take chances, to lose, and still move forward. And for Mordecai, this was that moment. It was the turning point because it showed him what he still needed to learn. It hurt, but it mattered. And it pushed him one step closer to becoming the version of himself that could eventually find something real. After everything that happened with Margaret, Mordecai was in a rough spot. He did not talk about it much, but the weight of it sat on his shoulders in every scene. He looked distracted. This kind of heartbreak does not just fade away, especially when the story never really had a clean ending. One moment, he was ready to ask her to be his girlfriend. The next, she was gone. He had spent years building up the idea of what he thought love should be, tying it to moments that never quite lined up. So when that fantasy finally collapsed, he was left holding a version of love that only existed in his head. He did not know what to do with all the feelings he had been carrying for so long. And that's when CJ entered the picture. Her timing felt perfect, at least from the outside. CJ was lively, spontaneous, full of energy. She brought something entirely new into Mordecai's life, something that did not feel heavy. She joked with him, made him laugh when he needed it most. She did not bring emotional baggage into the room, and that helped him forget about his own for a little while. Everything between them felt light and effortless, and when you are still hurting, that kind of comfort can feel like a life raft. Their relationship started fast. The chemistry was there, and neither of them had to try too hard to make it work. It felt like fun again, something Mordecai had not experienced in a long time. For a while, things actually seemed okay. They went on dates, hung out with friends, and enjoyed the kind of casual closeness that comes when no one is overthinking every move. CJ made it easier for Mordecai to live in the moment, to stop looping through what went wrong with Margaret. But the problem was never really about CJ. It was about timing. Even though it felt like a clean slate, Mordecai was still dragging parts of his past into the present, whether he realized it or not. When Margaret came back, even for a short while, it shook. Something loose in him. Feelings he had pushed down started to rise again. The way he looked at her was a reminder that some part of him was still holding on. CJ noticed it immediately. She was intuitive. She knew when his heart was not fully in it, and no amount of denial could hide that forever. Mordecai tried to play it cool. He told himself he had moved on. He told CJ he was fine. But when you are still tied to someone else in the back of your mind, that tension eventually starts to leak into everything. CJ gave him time. She did not accuse him of anything. But by the time Muscle Man's wedding came around, CJ had already made up her mind. She had been hoping things would settle, that maybe what they had would turn into something more stable. But watching Mordecai wrestle with feelings he never really resolved made it clear. She was with someone who still had one foot in another story. And that was not something she was willing to accept. So she told him the truth out of self-respect. She told him their relationship was built on shaky ground, that no matter how good it felt sometimes, it would not last if he was still looking over his shoulder. And then she left with just a simple truth. She deserved more than someone who was still stuck in the past. That moment hurt because Mordecai knew she was right. CJ had been nothing but honest with him, and he could not offer the same in return. That realization cut deeper than any argument could have. It forced him to look at where he really was, not where he wanted to be, but where he actually stood emotionally. And the truth was hard to admit. He had not fully let go of Margaret. He was trying to move forward while still carrying the weight of what never got resolved. That is why CJ's role in Mordecai's story matters so much. She was a mirror. She showed him exactly where he was still broken, and she did it without bitterness. She was kind, clear, and strong enough to walk away when it became obvious that he could not give her the relationship she deserved. She did not wait around hoping he would change. She left before either of them got more hurt, and her leaving left a mark on Mordecai, one that helped shape who he would eventually become. It taught him that moving on is about doing the work, sitting with the feelings you do not want to face, letting go of the version of love you thought you needed, and making space for something healthier, quieter, and more real. CJ's story with Mordecai ended with a quiet truth that stuck. You can care about someone deeply and still not be ready for them. You can want something badly and still not be in the right place to make it work. And when someone sees that in you, when they recognize that you are not ready, sometimes the kindest thing they can do is walk away. That is what CJ did. And even though their chapter ended, the lesson she gave Mordecai lasted long after. Real love needs presence. It needs honesty. It needs both people to be fully there, not half living in old memories. Until Mordecai could do that, nothing real was going to last. CJ knew that before he did, and that is what made her part of his story so important. When we see Mordecai with Steph in the regular show finale, the change in him is quiet but clear. Years have passed. Life has moved forward. He is older, a little more settled, and for the first time, he seems completely comfortable in his own life. Steph is part of that life. She is there, beside him at the gallery, surrounded by their friends and family. She is with him during the celebration, with their kids, holding hands, with ease and confidence. Their connection is already built. We are seeing something that has lasted. And for Mordecai, who spent so much of the show unsure of what he wanted, that sense of stability carries weight. She isn't treated like some big twist or a reward waiting for him at the end. She's just a person, not a prize. In fact, the show does not say much about her at all, but what we do see says enough. Steph is someone Mordecai chose at a time when he actually knew what he needed. They are both artists. They built a family together. They show up in the world around them as two people who support each other and share a life. There is a quiet understanding between them that tells you everything you need to know. Earlier in the series, Mordecai was stuck in cycles. With Margaret, he hesitated for years. He built her up in his mind, imagined a relationship that never quite landed, and froze up when it finally came time to say what he felt. With CJ, he tried to move on too quickly. He jumped into something before he was ready, trying to convince himself it could work, even though part of him was still somewhere else. else. Those relationships mattered. They shaped him, but they also exposed just how unsteady he was with himself. So much of his love life was about reacting to timing, to emotion, to uncertainty. By the time he meets Steph, Mordecai is no longer trying to figure out who he is or what he wants. That part of his life has already happened. Steph is someone he built something with after the pressure was gone. Their relationship built on steady moments, on showing up for each other, sharing goals, and growing together over time. We do not see how they met, but that is the point. Their relationship is about being ready. Mordecai's entire arc is about emotional growth, figuring out why his relationships keep falling apart, what patterns he keeps repeating, and how to actually move forward in a real, grounded way. Steph is the answer to that growth because she fits into the version of life he finally figured out how to build. And it matters that their life is simple. We see them raising children, working as artists, surrounded by the same park crew that supported Mordecai through his chaotic 20s. There's no spotlight on him in this ending. He is just one person among many, a partner, a parent, a creator. That kind of normalcy might seem small after everything he went through, but it is exactly what he needed. For a long time, Mordecai was defined by tension between wanting things to work and not knowing how to make them work, between idealizing people and being terrified to lose them. With Steph, that version of him is gone. He is living inside a relationship, and more importantly, he is showing up fully, not just hoping it all magically stays together. Steph is not there to be compared to Margaret or CJ. She is not better than them. She is different because of when she arrives and who Mordecai has become by then. Margaret was the crush he could never quite reach. CJ was the chance he took too soon. Steph is the person he met when he had finally slowed down, stopped reacting to the past, and started choosing what came next with intention. Her presence in the finale is brief, but full of meaning. We do not need flashbacks or deep exposition to understand her role. She's part of the life Mordecai built, one that is real. They are raising their kids, making art, spending time with old friends. They are doing what a lot of people hope to do, live with purpose and clarity after years of figuring things out the hard way. That is why Steph matters. She is the beginning of a life that finally makes sense, because he stopped clinging to the versions of love that kept hurting him. He let go of what could have been, stopped trying to rewrite the past, and made space for something that actually fit. In a show full of surreal adventures and emotional chaos, Mordecai's ending feels quietly grounded. He grew up, moved forward, and when the time was right, he found someone who fit the life he'd come to value. Real, steady, and true. That's what Steph represents. A sense of peace. And for Mordecai, peace was what he had been searching for all along. So, what can we learn from this? Looking at Mordecai's journey through these three relationships reveals a crucial truth about moving on. You cannot successfully love someone new while you're still emotionally invested in your past. His progression from Margaret to CJ to Steph demonstrates that healing happens in stages, and each stage requires genuine work rather than simply finding someone else to focus on. With Margaret, he learned that courage and timing don't always align, leaving him with unresolved feelings that poisoned his next attempt at love. CJ suffered the consequences of his unfinished emotional business, showing how unfair it is to ask someone to compete with a ghost. Her decision to leave taught him that pretending to be ready isn't the same as actually being ready. By the time he meets Steph, years have passed and he's done the internal work necessary to be fully present with another person. Their relationship works because it's built on who he actually is, not who he's trying to become or what he's trying to forget. The lesson is clear. Moving on requires you to sit with your feelings, process your past, and do the uncomfortable work of growth before you can offer someone else a whole heart. Love isn't about finding the right person to heal you, it's about becoming the right person to love someone else completely. If you guys liked our video today, make sure to subscribe to our channel, and I'll see you in the next one.